My wife laughed and said, "What? You think you're my only option?" During an argument about respect. I said, "Definitely not." Then I made sure she had other options by doing something she never saw coming. She stopped laughing when she found out. You know that moment when everything clicks into place? Not the good kind of click, the kind that makes your stomach drop and suddenly all the puzzle pieces you've been ignoring form one ugly picture. That's exactly what happened to me on a Tuesday night in our cramped apartment, 3 years into what I thought was a solid marriage. I'm Rami, by the way, 31, cybersecurity analyst, the kind of guy who fixes problems for a living but apparently couldn't see the biggest one sitting right across from me at our IKEA dining table. Soraya was picking at her salad, the expensive organic stuff from Whole Foods that I paid for, naturally, and scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even there. Story of my life these days. "Babe, we need to talk about this weekend," I said, closing my laptop after another 12-hour workday. The blue light had been burning my eyes, but honestly, work was starting to feel like the easier part of my day. At least code made sense. At least when I fixed something, it stayed fixed. "What about this weekend?" she asked, not looking up from whatever TikTok was apparently more important than her husband. "The Morrison wedding? You RSVP'd for both of us without asking. I've got that security audit due Monday and—" "Oh my God, Rami." She finally looked up, but it wasn't the look I was hoping for. It was that look, the one that said I was being dramatic, unreasonable, just another problem she had to deal with. "It's one day. Can't you just take a break from being Mr. Robot for 5 minutes? Mr. Robot. That's what she'd started calling me lately, like my job was some kind of joke. Like the fact that my paycheck covered our rent, her car payment, her phone bill, and pretty much everything else we touched was just some minor detail. I worked my ass off in cybersecurity so she could manage a boutique clothing store downtown and complain about how exhausting retail was. Don't get me wrong. Retail sucks, I get it. But exhausting enough to justify making zero effort at home? I wasn't buying it anymore. "It's not about taking a break," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's about respect. About making decisions together. You know, like married people do." That's when she laughed. Not a little chuckle, not a nervous giggle. A full-on, head-thrown-back laugh like I'd just told her the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "Respect?" she said, wiping fake tears from her eyes. "What? You think you're my only option?" The words hit me like a slap. I sat there for a second, processing what she'd just said. My only option. Like I was some kind of consolation prize she'd settled for. Like the 3 years we'd spent building a life together, or what I thought was a life together, was just her biding her time until something better came along. And suddenly, all those little comments started making sense. The way she'd casually mention the guy at her gym who kept asking for her number. How she'd laugh about her ex still sliding into her DMs. The bartender at that trendy spot downtown who supposedly gave her free drinks because she was just so charming. I'd brushed it all off as harmless flirting, confident in our relationship. Turns out I was the only one who was confident. "You're right," I said quietly, and I watched her smirk grow wider. She thought she'd won something. Thought she'd put me in my place. Definitely not. That's when her expression changed. The smirk faltered, and for the first time in months, I had her full attention. She could probably hear something different in my voice. That calm that comes when you finally stop fighting a losing battle and start planning your exit strategy. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, but I was already standing up, clearing my plate. My appetite was gone anyway. "Nothing, babe. You're absolutely right. You've got options." I rinsed my dish in the sink, dried my hands on the towel I'd bought to replace the one she'd ruined with her makeup, and headed toward our bedroom. I'm just not going to be one of them anymore. I could hear her calling after me, but I was done. Done pretending everything was fine. Done being grateful for scraps of attention from my own wife. Done funding a lifestyle for someone who saw me as nothing more than a backup plan. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while she tossed and turned next to me, probably wondering if I was serious. She'd find out soon enough. Because here's the thing about us cybersecurity guys. We're really good at identifying vulnerabilities in systems. And I just realized that Soraya's whole world was built on one massive vulnerability, me. She wanted to know about her options? Fine. It was time for her to explore them. All of them. Without my safety net, my paycheck, my patience, or my presence. She'd laughed at the idea of respecting me, so I was going to respect her choice. I was going to give her exactly what she asked for, complete freedom to pursue all those other options she was so confident about. The laugh that ended everything had also begun something new. My plan was simple: remove myself from the equation and see how long her confidence lasted when she had to stand on her own 2 feet. Time to find out if all those admirers were willing to cover rent. You know what's funny about rage? Everyone expects you to blow up, throw things, scream until your voice gives out. But sometimes, real anger is the opposite. Sometimes it's ice-cold clarity that cuts through all the bullshit you've been telling yourself. That's exactly what I felt the morning after Soraya's little laugh. Not fury, just crystal clear purpose. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., same as always. Soraya was still dead to the world, sprawled across 3/4 of our king-size bed like she owned the whole damn thing. Which, let's be honest, she probably thought she did. But looking at her lying there, hair tangled and mouth slightly open, I didn't feel the usual mix of affection and frustration. I felt nothing, and that nothing was exactly what I needed. Coffee first. Always coffee first. I ground the beans in our expensive Breville machine, the one I'd bought after she complained that our old Mr. Coffee wasn't sophisticated enough for her morning routine. Funny how everything in our apartment had a story like that. Something perfectly functional that suddenly wasn't good enough once Soraya decided we needed an upgrade. And who paid for all these upgrades? Yeah, you guessed it. While the espresso pulled, I made a mental inventory. TV? 75-inch Samsung I bought last Black Friday. Coffee machine? Mine. The KitchenAid stand mixer she used exactly twice before deciding baking was too much work? Mine. Hell, even the mattress we were sleeping on came from my credit card. She'd insisted on the organic bamboo fiber one that cost more than my first car. But it wasn't just the big stuff. It was everything. The subscription services streaming on that TV, Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, all charged to my card. Her phone, on my family plan because it was cheaper that way. Her gym membership at that boutique fitness place downtown where she spent more time taking selfies than actually working out. Yep, mine too. Even her Spotify premium account was linked to my payment method. I sipped my coffee and started doing math. 90%. That's what I was covering. 90% of our lifestyle, and for what? So she could work part-time hours at a boutique, complain about how tired she was, and remind me that I wasn't her only option? My phone buzzed with a text from Elias. Early morning workout? I'm about to head to the gym. Elias had been my best friend since college, the kind of guy who'd loan you his car without asking questions and always had your back when things got messy. More importantly, he'd been looking for a roommate since his last one moved in with his girlfriend 3 months ago. Instead of replying about the gym, I called him. He picked up on the second ring, probably expecting me to complain about being too tired or too busy to work out. Again, dude, it's not even 6 a.m. This better be good, he said, but I could hear the smile in his voice. You still need a roommate? I asked, cutting straight to the point. There was a pause. Elias knew me well enough to know I didn't make casual conversation at dawn. Yeah, man. The spare room's been ready since Marcus moved out. Why? You and Soraya having problems. You could say that. I walked over to our living room window, looking out at the city just starting to wake up. How fast could I move in? As fast as you want. Seriously, Rami, what's going on? I gave him the short version. Soraya's comment about options, the disrespect, the way she'd been treating our marriage like some kind of temporary arrangement while I funded her lifestyle. Elias listened without interrupting, which is exactly why he'd been my best friend for over a decade. Bro, he said when I finished, I've been waiting for this conversation for 2 years. That spare room is yours whenever you want it. That's when the plan really started forming. I wasn't going to be dramatic about this. No big confrontation, no ultimatums, no begging her to choose me over her mysterious other options. I was just going to quietly extract myself from the equation and let her figure out how to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to without my income supporting it. Friday morning came, and Soraya left for work same as always, kissing me goodbye out of habit while scrolling through Instagram. Don't forget we've got dinner with my sister tonight, she said, not looking up from whatever influencer was showing off their morning smoothie routine. Wouldn't miss it, I lied smoothly. The second her car pulled out of our complex, I was in motion. I'd taken the day off work, told my boss I had a family emergency, which wasn't technically a lie. My marriage dying definitely qualified as an emergency. First stop, the bank. I opened a new checking account at a different branch, transferred my direct deposit, and moved half our joint savings into it. Legally, it was my money anyway. I'd been the only one contributing for the past year. Then I called every subscription service, every utility company, every monthly payment that had my name on it. I'd like to cancel my Netflix account. I need to remove a line from my phone plan. Yes, I want to discontinue the gym membership under Soraya Hassan. Each cancellation felt like cutting a cord. By noon, I had systematically dismantled the financial foundation of her entire lifestyle. Her phone would be cut off by 5 p.m. The Wi-Fi would die at midnight. Come Monday, she'd discover that her gym access card wouldn't work. The packing was therapeutic. 3 years of shared living, but most of the good stuff was mine anyway. The TV went first, then the coffee machine, then the sound system. I left behind anything that was clearly hers and anything I genuinely didn't care about. But the essentials, the things that made daily life comfortable, those came with me. By 4 p.m., Elias showed up with his truck. "Damn, man," he said, looking around our half-empty apartment. "You really went scorched earth." "Not scorched earth," I corrected, loading the last box. "Just taking back what's mine." The note was simple. I left it on the kitchen counter where she'd see it as soon as she walked in. "You're right, Soraya. You have options. Rent's due on the 1st, utilities not included. Best of luck." Short, sweet, and absolutely devastating. Because now she'd have to figure out how to exercise all those options she was so confident about. Time to see if any of her admirers were willing to cover a $2,800 rent payment. Saturday night at Elias's place was exactly what I needed. We ordered pizza, cracked open a couple of beers, and I helped him rearrange the living room to make space for my TV. It felt good to be around someone who didn't make me feel like I was walking on eggshells every time I opened my mouth. Elias had always been straight with me, when I was being an idiot, when I was making excuses, when I needed to hear hard truths. Right now, though, he was just letting me decompress. "You feel bad about it?" he asked, settling into his recliner with a slice of pepperoni. I thought about it for a second, really thought about it. "Nah, man. I feel free." And I did. For the first time in months, I wasn't mentally calculating how much money I was spending or wondering if Soraya would approve of my choices. I was just existing, and it felt incredible. That's when my phone started lighting up. The first text came at 8:47 p.m. "Rami, the Wi-Fi's not working. Did you forget to pay the bill?" I showed Elias the screen, and he snorted. "She thinks you forgot to pay it." "Just wait," I said, taking another sip of beer. "This is going to get good." Sure enough, 20 minutes later, why is Netflix asking for a new password? I can't log into any of the streaming stuff. Then, at 9:30, my phone just went to some emergency-only mode. What's happening? I could picture her in our old apartment. Well, her apartment now. Frantically trying to figure out why her entire digital life was falling apart. She'd probably tried calling me first, only to discover that her phone couldn't make regular calls anymore. The irony was beautiful. Elias read over my shoulder as each message came in. "Dude, she still doesn't get it. She thinks this is all some mistake." "Give it time," I said. Reality's about to hit her like a freight train. The messages kept coming. "Rami, I can't even order food because my Uber Eats won't work without data. This isn't funny." Then, "Where's the TV? Where's the coffee machine? What the hell is going on?" That's when I knew she'd finally made it home and seen the note. I imagined her walking into that apartment, seeing all the empty spaces where my stuff used to be, and finally understanding that this wasn't some technical glitch or oversight. This was intentional. This was me taking back everything I'd been providing while she shopped around for better options. The next message was different. Longer. Desperate. "Rami, I don't understand why you're doing this. We had a fight, okay? Couples fight. You can't just disappear and take everything. This is crazy. Call me back. Please." I stared at that message for a long time. For a split second, I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered her laugh. That dismissive, cruel laugh when I tried to talk about respect. The way she'd said, "You think you're my only option?" Like I was some kind of joke. "You gonna respond?" Elias asked. I typed back. "Maybe try one of your other options?" Then I blocked her number. Elias raised his beer. "To cutting dead weight." "To cutting dead weight," I agreed, clinking my bottle against his. But blocking her main number didn't stop the chaos. She started texting from her work phone, then from what I assumed was a friend's phone. Rami, this is Soraya. Why are you doing this? I can't even afford groceries right now. Then, the rent is due Monday, and I don't have $2,800. You know I don't have that kind of money. Each message just confirmed what I already knew. She'd been completely dependent on me financially, but somehow convinced herself that she was the one doing me a favor by staying in our relationship. She'd been living in a fantasy world where she could treat me like garbage while I bankrolled her lifestyle, secure in the knowledge that I'd never actually leave. Wrong on both counts. The messages got more frantic as the night went on. My card got declined at the grocery store. People are staring. This is embarrassing. Then, I try to call my mom, but my phone is completely dead now. I'm using the store's phone. This is insane. I showed that one to Elias. She's at a grocery store using their customer service phone to text you? Looks like it. I couldn't help but smile. Remember when she used to brag about that bartender giving her free drinks? Maybe she should ask him to cover her grocery bill. The final message of the night came at 11:45 p.m. from yet another unknown number. This is Soraya. I'm at my friend Jessica's house. I can't believe you would do this to me. 3 years of marriage and you just abandoned me? I thought you loved me. I stared at that message for a long time. Love. Yeah, I had loved her. Loved her enough to work overtime so she could have nice things. Loved her enough to ignore the red flags when she started talking about other men. Loved her enough to keep trying when she stopped trying. But love isn't supposed to be a one-way street, and it definitely isn't supposed to come with contempt and disrespect. You know what the crazy part is? I said to Elias. She still thinks this is about the fight. She doesn't get that this is about the pattern. The disrespect, the taking me for granted, the casual cruelty. She thinks I'm being dramatic over one argument. Some people don't get it until the consequences hit, Elias said. Sounds like she's about to get a crash course in reality. I turned off my phone and settled in to watch a movie. For the first time in months, I wasn't worried about what Soraya was doing, who she was texting, or whether she approved of my choices. She'd wanted to explore her options? Well, now she had all the time and freedom in the world to do exactly that. Welcome to the real world, babe. Population, just you. Monday morning felt different. Not just because I was waking up in Elias's spare room instead of my old bedroom, but because for the first time in months, I didn't have that knot in my stomach wondering what kind of mood Soraya would be in. I grabbed coffee from Elias's regular old Mr. Coffee, no fancy espresso machine needed, and actually enjoyed the simplicity of it. Work was a welcome distraction. I dove into the security audit I'd been putting off, the one that had caused the whole wedding argument in the first place. Funny how much clearer your head gets when you're not constantly managing someone else's emotions and expectations. By lunch, I'd made more progress than I had all week. But I wasn't naive. I knew Soraya wouldn't just quietly accept her new reality. She'd try to control the narrative, make herself the victim, probably tell anyone who'd listen that I was some kind of monster who'd abandoned his poor, defenseless wife. Fine, let her try. I had a different plan. During my lunch break, I did something I hadn't done in years. I updated my dating profile. Not because I was ready to jump into anything serious, but because I needed to make a point. And honestly, the idea of putting myself back out there felt pretty damn good. I kept it simple. Recently single after ending a 3-year marriage. Looking to meet genuine people who value respect and partnership. Then I added a recent photo of me at the gym. Elias had taken it last month when I was actually looking pretty good. Working out had become my stress relief over the past few months, and it showed. Within 2 hours, I had matches. Lots of them. And here's where it got interesting. Some of these women looked familiar. Not close friends of Soraya's, but definitely people from her extended social circle. The yoga class crew she used to complain about, some girls from her work's happy hour group, even a couple of women from that boutique fitness place where she had her membership. Sarah from her yoga class was the first to message, "Hey, I heard through the grapevine that you and Soraya aren't together anymore. Hope you're doing okay." I kept it casual but honest. "Thanks for asking. Yeah, we split up." She told me I wasn't her only option, so I decided to let her explore the others. Sarah's response came back fast. "Wow, that's harsh. You seem to be handling it well, though." "Life's too short to stay where you're not appreciated," I replied. Then came Jessica, one of Soraya's work friends. "Rami, I can't believe you guys broke up. You always seemed so happy together. Again, I kept it simple. Appearances can be deceiving. Turns out she had other options she wanted to pursue. I'm just respecting that choice. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone was buzzing with conversations from women who'd heard bits and pieces of the story. I wasn't gossiping or talking trash. I was just being honest about what had happened. Soraya had made it clear that I wasn't enough for her, so I'd stepped aside. Simple as that. The best part? Some of these women were sharing their own stories. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd noticed Soraya's behavior at social events. Sarah mentioned how Soraya used to flirt with other guys right in front of me at yoga class mixers. Jessica remembered Soraya bragging about men buying her drinks when she was supposed to be in a committed relationship. I always wondered how you put up with that, Jessica texted. She used to call you her backup plan when she thought no one was listening. Backup plan. There it was in black and white. I screenshotted that message, not out of spite, but because sometimes you need proof that you weren't crazy, that your instincts were right all along. Tuesday evening, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Rami, this is Amira, Soraya's cousin. She's been staying at my apartment since Saturday. She's crying constantly and says she can't afford her rent. What happened between you two? Amira had always been the level-headed one in Soraya's family. She was a nurse, worked hard, didn't take anyone's bullshit. If anyone would understand the situation, it would be her. She told me she had other options besides me. I replied, I'm just giving her the space to explore them. Other options? What does that mean? I thought about how much to share, then decided honesty was the best policy. During an argument, she laughed when I tried to talk about respect in our relationship. She asked if I thought I was her only option. When I said no, she seemed pretty confident about having alternatives. So I removed myself from the equation and let her pursue those alternatives. There was a long pause before Amira responded. Oh, Rami, I'm so sorry. That doesn't sound like something someone says if they're happy in their marriage. It's not, I replied. But now she gets to find out if any of those options are willing to help with a $2,800 rent payment. Jesus, she really can't afford that place on her own, can she? Nope. I was covering about 90% of our expenses. But hey, maybe one of those admirers she used to tell me about will step up. Amira's final message was telling. I love my cousin, but she's always expected everything to be handed to her. Maybe this will teach her some responsibility. By Wednesday, the word was definitely out. I was getting messages from people I barely knew, all asking about the breakup. But here's what I noticed. Most of them weren't shocked. They were supportive. Apparently, a lot of people had been waiting for me to wake up and realize what everyone else could see. The narrative was spreading, but it wasn't the one Soraya wanted. Instead of poor abandoned wife, the story was becoming spoiled woman who took devoted husband for granted until he finally had enough. And the best part? I didn't have to work to make that narrative stick. It was just the truth, and the truth has a way of speaking for itself. I ended Wednesday by matching with 3 more women, including one who sent me a message that made me smile. I saw Soraya's Instagram stories about her financial abuse. Funny how taking back your own money after someone disrespects you is considered abuse these days. You dodged a bullet. Yeah, I thought, settling into bed in my new room. I really did. Wednesday morning started like any other workday, except I actually felt like getting up. No dragging myself out of bed while Soraya hogged the covers and complained about her exhausting part-time schedule. Just me, my alarm, and the kind of energy that comes from finally being in control of your own life again. I was 3 coffees deep into debugging a network vulnerability when my desk phone rang. Our building's security guard, Marcus, was on the line. Hey, Rami, there's a woman down here asking to see you. Says she's your wife. My stomach tightened, but not with the old familiar anxiety. This was different. This was anticipation. I'd been wondering when she'd make this move. What'd she look like, Marcus? Brunette, about 5'6", wearing sunglasses inside. Looks like she's been crying. Should I send her up? Through the glass wall of my office, I could see the elevator bank. I could picture Soraya down in the lobby, probably rehearsing whatever sob story she'd prepared. Part of me was curious what approach she'd take. Would she go for anger? Desperation? Maybe try to seduce me back? Marcus, I said, keeping my voice steady. I don't know anyone by that name. There was a pause. You sure, man? She seems pretty upset. Positive. If she's causing a disturbance, Feel free to escort her out. Copy that. I hung up and walked to the window that overlooked the street. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, I saw Soraya emerge from our building. Even from 15 floors up, I could tell she was pissed. She was gesturing wildly, probably yelling at Marcus, definitely not taking rejection well. She stood on the sidewalk for a few minutes, looking up at the building like she was trying to figure out which window was mine. Then she started screaming my name. Rami, I know you're up there. Rami. My coworkers were starting to notice. A few people had gathered at the windows, craning their necks to see what the commotion was about. This was exactly the kind of scene Soraya loved to create. Maximum drama, maximum attention, maximum pressure on me to just give in and make it stop. But I wasn't the same guy who used to cave to avoid embarrassment. I pulled out my phone and started recording. She kept screaming for about 5 more minutes before Marcus and another security guard approached her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see the conversation getting heated. Soraya was pointing up at the building, probably demanding they let her in, while the guards were clearly explaining that she needed to leave. When she finally realized she wasn't getting inside, she kicked a trash can. Classy. The whole office was watching now. My manager, Dave, walked over with a coffee and stood next to me at the window. Ex-girlfriend? He asked. Ex-wife, actually. Yikes. She always this dramatic. Only when she doesn't get her way. I watched Soraya storm off toward the parking garage, still shouting my name. Which, apparently, is most of the time. Dave chuckled. Well, at least now we know why you've seemed so much more relaxed lately. He wasn't wrong. The past few days had been the most peaceful I'd felt in months. No walking on eggshells, no wondering if some innocent comment would set off a fight, no constantly calculating whether I could afford whatever new thing Soraya had decided we needed. My personal phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. That was really mature, Rami. Having security throw out your wife like I'm some kind of stalker. I replied, ex-wife. And showing up at someone's workplace uninvited after they've made it clear they don't want contact is pretty much the definition of stalking. I just wanted to talk. You had 3 years to talk. You chose to laugh instead. That evening, I got a call from Mrs. Rahimi, Soraya's mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mrs. Rahimi had always been decent to me, even if she'd clearly spoiled her daughter rotten. Rami, beta, she said, using the Farsi term of endearment she'd always called me. My daughter is in so much pain. What happened between you two? I found myself genuinely sad to disappoint her. Mrs. Rahimi, I have nothing but respect for you. But Soraya made it very clear that she had other options besides me. I'm just giving her the space to explore them. There was a long silence. Other options? What does this mean? I explained the conversation, the disrespect, the pattern of behavior that had led to this moment. Mrs. Rahimi listened without interrupting, which was more than her daughter had ever done. Oh, Rami, she finally said, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I am so sorry. We let her get used to getting everything handed to her. Her father and I, we wanted to give her the life we never had, but maybe we gave her too much. She's your daughter, Mrs. Rahimi. I understand why you protected her, but I can't live my life being someone's backup plan. No, you cannot. A man deserves respect in his own home. She paused. Will you consider talking to her? Maybe if she apologizes. Ma, I said gently. She showed up at my work today screaming my name on the street. She's not sorry. She's just scared because her safety net is gone. Mrs. Rahimi sighed deeply. I suppose we let her get used to getting everything handed to her. This is not your fault, Beta. You are a good man. You deserve better than this. After we hung up, I sat in Elias's living room thinking about that conversation. Mrs. Rahimi got it. She understood that respect wasn't negotiable, that marriage was supposed to be a partnership, not one person bankrolling another person's lifestyle while getting treated like garbage in return. Her mother understood what Soraya still didn't, that I wasn't coming back, that this wasn't some dramatic gesture to get attention or force an apology. This was me finally choosing myself over someone who'd made it clear she didn't value what I brought to her life. The fall had begun, and it was going to be a long way down. By the second week, I was settling into a routine that actually felt sustainable. Morning workouts with Elias, productive days at the office without constant text interruptions, evenings where I could actually relax without wondering what mood I'd be walking into. It was like I'd forgotten what normal felt like until I got it back. But Soraya? She was spiraling, and the evidence was everywhere. It started with the social media posts. She'd always been an Instagram queen, but now her feed was turning into a real-time documentary of her breakdown. Gone were the carefully curated selfies and food pics. Instead, it was crying selfies with captions like, "When someone you trusted completely betrays you, and some people only love you when it's convenient." The best part? The comments weren't exactly sympathetic. People were asking questions. What happened? Where's Rami? Girl, you always said you had options. What's the problem? That's when I knew the real story was getting out. Word travels fast in our social circle, and apparently, several people remembered her bragging about all the men who were interested in her, calling me her backup plan, and generally treating our marriage like some kind of temporary arrangement. But the social media drama was just the beginning. Thursday morning, I got a text from my friend Nia, who used to hang out with both of us before she got tired of Soraya's attitude. "Bro, you need to see this. Your ex is sliding into DMs like it's her full-time job." She sent me screenshots. Holy shit. Soraya had been messaging guys from our old friend group, her gym, even random dudes from dating apps she'd apparently re-downloaded. The messages were pathetic. "Hey, I'm going through a really tough time right now and could use some company. My husband abandoned me and I'm struggling to pay my bills. Maybe we could grab dinner? I always thought you were really attractive. Want to hang out sometime?" One guy, Tyler from her old yoga class, had screenshot his entire conversation and sent it to his girlfriend, who sent it to Nia. The thirst was real, and it was desperate. Jesus. I texted back to Nia. She's really working through that contact list. It gets better, Nia replied. Check Instagram. She's about to post something. I switched apps and refreshed Soraya's story. There it was, a crying selfie in what looked like her car, with text overlay that read, "Some people only love you when it's easy. Going through the hardest time of my life and finding out who my real friends are." The hypocrisy was stunning. This was the same woman who'd laughed at me for wanting respect, who'd casually mentioned other men hitting on her like it was some kind of threat, who'd made it clear I wasn't her only option. Now that her bluff had been called, suddenly she was the victim. But the universe has a sense of humor, because that's when things got really interesting. I was grabbing lunch at my usual spot downtown, a little coffee shop called Grind that makes killer sandwiches, when I spotted a familiar brunette at a corner table. Soraya. She was with some guy I didn't recognize, clearly trying to work her charm offensive. Probably one of the poor bastards who'd responded to her desperate DM campaign. I ordered my usual turkey club and an iced coffee, and found a table where I could observe without being obvious. The guy looked uncomfortable, checking his phone constantly, while Soraya leaned forward, touching his arm, doing that breathy laugh thing she used to do when she wanted something. Their conversation was getting heated. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. "Just need help with rent." Husband was controlling. "Really good time together?" That's when the guy stood up abruptly, shaking his head. "Look, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm not your ATM. Good luck with everything." He left her sitting there, and I watched her facade crumble in real time. The confident, flirty expression melted into something closer to panic. She grabbed her phone and started typing furiously, probably moving on to the next name on her list. I was getting ready to leave when she looked up and saw me. The color drained from her face. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the coffee shop. Then she did something that surprised me. She got up and walked over to my table. "Rami," she said, trying to sound casual, but failing completely. "What are you doing here?" "Getting lunch," I replied, not looking up from my phone. "You?" "I was just." She glanced back at the empty table where her date had abandoned her. "Meeting a friend." Looked more like begging to me. I finally met her eyes. "How's that whole other options thing working out for you?" Her composure finally cracked. "You can't just pretend I don't exist. We were married for 3 years. Were. Past tense." I stood up, leaving money on the table. "And yeah, I can pretend you don't exist. You made it pretty clear I was just one of many options. So go explore the others." I walked out, leaving her standing there in the middle of a crowded coffee shop, probably realizing that her safety net was never coming back. Friday morning hit different. I woke up actually looking forward to the weekend instead of dreading whatever drama Soraya might have cooked up. Elias was already up, making eggs and bacon like we were college roommates again, and honestly, It felt great to have someone around who didn't treat every conversation like a potential minefield. "Sleep good?" he asked, sliding a plate across the counter. "Like a baby. First full week without walking on eggshells." I grabbed the hot sauce, something I'd never been able to keep in the house because Soraya hated spicy food. It's amazing how much mental energy you get back when you're not constantly managing someone else's emotions. That's when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. People were tagging me in posts and comments. My stomach dropped for a second, thinking Soraya had escalated to full-blown online harassment. But when I checked, it wasn't what I expected. She'd gone nuclear, but not in the way I thought. Her latest Instagram post was a full-blown essay about financial abuse and emotional manipulation. According to her version of events, I was a controlling monster who'd trapped her in dependency and then cruelly abandoned her when she tried to assert her independence. The whole thing read like she'd copy-pasted from some relationship advice blog, throwing around buzzwords about narcissistic abuse and gaslighting. "Holy shit," Elias said, reading over my shoulder. "She's really going for the victim angle." Yeah, except she forgot that half our mutual friends know the real story. I scrolled through the comments, and sure enough, people weren't buying it. Sarah from her yoga class had commented, "Didn't you used to brag about having backup options? Seems like Rami just took you up on that." Jessica from her work had added, "Girl, you literally called him your safety net at happy hour last month. This is embarrassing." But the best comment came from Tyler, the guy whose DMs she'd been sliding into. "This is rich coming from someone who just tried to get me to pay her rent on a first date." I screenshot that whole thread and saved it. Not for revenge, but for documentation. Because I had a feeling this was just the beginning of her smear campaign. The real test came that afternoon. I was meeting a client at Grind, the same coffee shop where I'd witnessed her failed date yesterday, when I spotted her walking in. She saw me immediately, and her eyes lit up like she'd found her target. "Rami," she called out loud enough for half the shop to hear. "We need to talk." Every head in the place turned toward us. This was exactly what she wanted, a public scene where I'd either look like an asshole for ignoring her or get drawn into drama. Classic Soraya move. I kept my voice calm and level. "We don't have anything to discuss, Soraya. You can't just abandon your wife and pretend everything's fine." She was getting louder, more theatrical. 3 years of marriage and you just disappeared. The barista, a college-age girl with purple hair, approached our table. "Excuse me, sir, is this person bothering you?" Before I could answer, Soraya whipped around. "Bothering him? I'm his wife. He stole everything from our apartment and left me with nothing." "Ex-wife," I corrected calmly. "And I took back the things I paid for after she told me I wasn't her only option." Purple hair barista looked confused but determined. "Ma'am, you're disturbing other customers. I'm going to need you to lower your voice or leave. This is unbelievable." Soraya's voice hit that pitch that meant she was about to completely lose it. "He's the one who's abusive. He controlled me with money and then abandoned me." That's when she made her fatal mistake. In her dramatic gesturing, she knocked over the display of coffee mugs near the counter. The crash was loud enough to make everyone jump, and suddenly there were broken ceramic pieces scattered across the floor. The manager appeared immediately, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who. Soraya looked around the coffee shop, probably expecting someone to come to her rescue or at least show sympathy. Instead, she found a room full of people staring at her like she was completely unhinged. Which, honestly, she was. "How much?" she asked, deflated. $47. I watched Soraya's face as she realized she didn't have $47 to spare. Her card got declined twice before she finally had to call someone, probably her cousin Amira, to bring cash. The whole ordeal took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of her standing there red-faced while the manager waited and other customers whispered among themselves. When Amira finally showed up with the money, she looked mortified. "Soraya, what the hell is wrong with you?" Amira hissed as she handed over the cash. As they finally left, I heard Amira say, "You can't keep doing this. It's embarrassing for the whole family." The manager came over to my table afterward. "I'm sorry about that scene. Your ex-wife?" "Yeah. She's having trouble adjusting to the concept of consequences." "Well, she's banned from here now. We don't tolerate that kind of behavior." She paused. "For what it's worth, you handled that really well. A lot of guys would have lost their temper." I finished my meeting and headed home feeling oddly satisfied. Soraya had tried to publicly humiliate me, and instead had ended up humiliating herself. Her smear campaign was backfiring because people knew the truth, and her public meltdowns were just confirming what everyone already suspected, that she was the problem, not me. Sometimes karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes it just needs you to get out of the way. 2 weeks after the coffee shop incident, I was finally finding my groove. Work was going great. I just closed that major security audit ahead of schedule, and my boss was hinting at a promotion. Elias and I had settled into a roommate routine that actually worked, and I was even starting to think about dating for real instead of just making a point. Life was good. That's when the eviction notice showed up in my inbox. Not for me, obviously, but Soraya had apparently listed me as an emergency contact on her lease. So when she got served with a 3-day notice to pay or quit, the landlord's office sent me a courtesy email. $2,800 in unpaid rent, plus late fees. She was officially screwed. I forwarded the email to Elias with a message. Guess those other options didn't pan out. His response was immediate. Damn, bro. She really thought you were bluffing. The thing is, I wasn't surprised. Soraya had been living in a fantasy world where she could have her cake and eat it too. Treat me like garbage while I bankrolled her lifestyle, secure in the knowledge that I'd never actually leave. Well, reality was a harsh teacher, and tuition was due. That afternoon, I got a call from my buddy Marcus, who still lived in our old complex. Dude, you need to see this. Your ex is moving out. Well, getting kicked out. Same difference. I could hear the chaos in the background. People yelling, doors slamming, general mayhem. She having a meltdown? Oh yeah, full nuclear. She tried to argue with the sheriff's deputy about how this was illegal and how her abusive ex-husband had left her destitute. The deputy basically told her that wasn't his problem and to keep packing. Where's she moving her stuff? That's the thing. She doesn't have much stuff left. Apparently, she sold a bunch of furniture to try to make rent. Didn't work, obviously. Her mom showed up with a U-Haul, and they're taking whatever's left to her parents' place. 2 hours away, in suburbia, where Soraya would have to live under her parents' rules and actually contribute to household expenses. The irony was beautiful, but Soraya wasn't going down without a fight. That evening, I discovered she'd started a GoFundMe page titled, Help Me Recover from Financial Abuse. The description was a masterpiece of victimhood. My name is Soraya, and I'm reaching out because I'm in an impossible situation. After 3 years of marriage, my husband suddenly abandoned me and took all of our shared belongings, leaving me unable to pay rent or even buy groceries. He controlled our finances so completely that I never had the chance to build my own savings or credit. Now I'm facing homelessness and have nowhere to turn. Any donation, no matter how small, would help me get back on my feet and start rebuilding my life. Thank you for your kindness and support during this incredibly difficult time. Goal, $10,000. I screenshot the whole thing and sent it to our group chat with friends. The responses were immediate and brutal. Shared belongings? Didn't you pay for everything? She's really doubling down on this narrative. The comments on this thing are going to be gold. They weren't wrong. Within hours, people who knew the real story were commenting. Sarah from yoga class wrote, Girl, you literally told me last month that Rami was your backup plan and you had better options. This is embarrassing. Jessica from her work added, Didn't you brag about that bartender giving you free drinks and call your husband an ATM? The internet never forgets. But the absolute best comment came from Tyler, the guy whose date she'd ruined. This woman tried to get me to pay her bills on our first date, and then threw a tantrum when I refused. Save your money, people. 2 days later, I checked the GoFundMe again. Total raised, $61. From 3 donors. Her Aunt Layla had given $50 with a comment about families sticking together. Some coworker had thrown in $10, probably out of pity. And there was a $1 donation from someone named Anonymous with the comment. Maybe try those other options you mentioned. I had nothing to do with that last one, but I definitely laughed. Then came the legal threats. My phone rang on a Thursday morning, and it was a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. Is this Rami Hassan? The voice was professional, older, definitely a lawyer. Speaking, this is attorney Michael Brennan. I represent your wife, Soraya Hassan, in a potential civil matter. She's asked me to contact you regarding what she believes may be a case of unjust enrichment. I almost laughed out loud. Unjust enrichment? For what? Mrs. Hassan claims that during your marriage, she provided domestic services, cooking, cleaning, emotional support that contributed significant value to the household. When you abandoned the marriage and took all shared assets, you were unjustly enriched by her labor without compensation. Uh-huh. And what domestic services would those be, exactly? There was a pause. Well, she mentioned cooking and cleaning primarily. We had a cleaning service. I have the receipts. And she reheated takeout. That's not exactly Julia Child territory. Another pause, longer this time. She also mentioned providing emotional support and companionship. Right up until she told me I wasn't her only option and laughed when I tried to discuss respect in our marriage. Look, Mr. Brennan, you seem like a decent guy, so I'm going to save you some time. She's lying to you, just like she's lying to everyone else. I have documentation, witnesses, and recorded conversations if you really want to go down this road. Recorded conversations? Including the one where she told me I wasn't her only option. Is your client planning to argue that she was unjustly enriched by my financial support while she shopped around for better alternatives? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, I'll need to discuss this further with my client. You do that. And Mr. Brennan? Next time someone wants to hire you to sue their ex for taking back their own stuff, maybe ask a few more questions first. He never called back. But Soraya wasn't done with her greatest hits tour. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. I'm pregnant. I stared at that message for a full minute before typing back. Impossible. We haven't touched each other in 2 months. The response came immediately. It could be from before. Soraya, we both know that's not true. We stopped having sex in January. It's March. Unless you're claiming an elephant-length pregnancy, the math doesn't work. Silence. Complete, deafening silence. Because we both knew the truth. Our marriage had been dead in the water long before I finally pulled the plug. The physical intimacy had dried up months ago, just like everything else. This was just her final desperate attempt to get me back, and it was built on a lie so transparent even she couldn't maintain it. The walls were closing in, and Soraya was running out of ammunition. Legal threats, crowdfunding campaigns, fake pregnancies. Nothing was working because the truth was bigger than her lies. She'd gambled that I would never actually leave, and she'd lost. Now she was facing the consequences of treating her marriage like a business transaction while expecting unconditional loyalty from the guy footing the bills. Game over. Life has a funny way of moving forward when you stop looking backward. A month after Soraya's fake pregnancy text, I was actually dating someone. Not just matching on apps or having coffee to make a point, actually dating. Her name was Leona, and she was everything Soraya wasn't. Independent, genuine, and refreshingly drama-free. I'd met Leona through one of those dating apps, but she wasn't from Soraya's social circle. She was a physical therapist who worked with veterans, had her own apartment, her own car, her own life. When we went to dinner, she insisted on splitting the check. When I offered to pick her up, she said she preferred meeting there. She was self-sufficient in ways that felt foreign after 3 years of funding someone else's entire existence. So what's your story? She asked over our second dinner at this little Italian place downtown. Divorced. Recently separated. Still dealing with the aftermath, honestly. I'd learned to be upfront about the situation early on. No point in pretending my life was drama-free when it definitely wasn't. Messy divorce? More like messy wife. She told me I wasn't her only option, so I decided to let her explore the others. Leona raised an eyebrow. And how's that working out for her? Not great. She's living with her parents 2 hours away and started a GoFundMe to recover from financial abuse that raised $61. She laughed, not the cruel, dismissive laugh Soraya used to give me, but genuine amusement. $61? Damn. Those other options really came through for her. That's what I liked about Leona. She got it. She understood that respect wasn't negotiable and that relationships were supposed to be partnerships, not one person supporting another person's lifestyle while getting treated like garbage. We'd been seeing each other for about 3 weeks when the real fireworks started. I was at Elias's place on a Saturday morning, making coffee and actually looking forward to my day off, when my phone started blowing up. First Elias's phone, then mine, then his again. Something was happening. Bro, Elias said, walking into the kitchen with his phone in his hand. Your crazy ex is outside. Outside where? Outside here, in our parking lot. She's been sitting in her car for like 20 minutes. I walked to the window and looked down. Sure enough, there was Soraya's little Honda parked right next to the building entrance. She was in the driver's seat, probably working up the courage for whatever insane plan she'd cooked up this time. How the hell did she find out where you live? Social media stalking, probably. I posted a picture of us at that brewery down the street last weekend. I watched her get out of the car, carrying what looked like a lawn chair. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. She set up the chair right in front of the building entrance like she was camping out for concert tickets. Then she just sat there, staring up at our floor like she could will me to come down and talk to her. This is psycho behavior, Elias said. I'm calling the cops. Wait. I was recording this whole thing on my phone. Let's see how far she takes it first. I want documentation. We didn't have to wait long. After about an hour of sitting there like a crazy person, she apparently got bored or frustrated or both. That's when she walked over to my car. My heart sank as I watched her pull something out of her purse. A key. She started dragging it along the side of my Camry, carving deep scratches into the paint from the front well, all the way to the back bumper. Now we call the cops, I said, still recording. The police response was faster than I expected. 2 officers showed up within 15 minutes, and I met them in the parking lot with my phone full of video evidence. Soraya was still sitting in her lawn chair when they approached her, probably thinking she could talk her way out of whatever trouble she was in. Ma'am, we got a call about vandalism. You know anything about the damage to this vehicle? That's my husband's car, she said, like that explained everything. We're having marital problems. Ex-husband, I corrected, showing the officers my video. And she keyed my car about an hour ago. I have the whole thing recorded. The officers watched the video, looked at the damage, and that was pretty much it. Soraya was arrested for vandalism right there in the parking lot, still protesting that she was the victim and I was the one who'd abandoned her. Sir, one of the officers said as they loaded her into the back of their cruiser, you might want to consider a restraining order. This kind of behavior usually escalates. As they drove away with Soraya screaming my name from the back seat, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Complete and total peace. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just the deep calm that comes when you finally realize the storm is over. That evening, I was telling Leona about the arrest over dinner when she said something that stopped me cold. You know what's funny? I know Soraya. You know her. We went to the same gym for a while. She used to hit on my boyfriend at the time, right in front of me. Always struck me as the type who thought the world owed her something. She took a sip of wine. When she found out we were dating, she sent me a Facebook message calling me a traitor for stealing her husband. What did you say back? Leona smiled. I told her I don't keep users as friends and that you deserved better. She reached across the table and took my hand. Which you do, by the way. For the first time in years, I actually believed it. 3 months later, I was standing in my new apartment. Yeah, Leona and I had gotten our own place. Watching the sunrise through windows that actually got decent light. It was a Friday morning, and I had the day off. No drama, no crisis management, no walking on eggshells. Just coffee, quiet, and the kind of peace I'd forgotten existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my old neighbor. Dude, you dodged a bullet. Your ex showed up at that Morrison wedding in Mexico solo. Apparently got wasted and hit on the groom's brother. Security had to escort her out. I showed the message to Leona, who was making eggs in our kitchen. The wedding she originally committed us to without asking? The very same. I poured myself coffee from our simple Mr. Coffee machine. No fancy espresso maker needed. She actually flew to Mexico by herself. That's... Leona paused, spatula in hand. That's really sad, actually. And it was. Not sad enough to make me regret my choices, but sad in the way watching someone self-destruct is always sad. Soraya had burned every bridge, alienated every friend, and was apparently now showing up drunk to weddings where she barely knew anyone, making scenes that would follow her forever on social media. The updates had been trickling in through mutual friends over the past few months. After the vandalism arrest, she'd racked up legal bills she couldn't afford. Her public defender had probably told her what I already knew, that keying someone's car on video doesn't leave much room for legal maneuvering. She'd ended up with community service, restitution payments, and a criminal record. Her job at the boutique hadn't survived the drama either. Apparently, Showing up late constantly while dealing with court dates and family crises doesn't mesh well with retail management. She was working part-time at some fast fashion place in the mall near her parents' house, making barely enough to cover her phone bill and gas money. The guy she'd been crashing with, some dude she'd met on a dating app during her desperate phase, had kicked her out after 2 weeks. Turns out even guys looking for easy hookups draw the line at psycho ex-wife behavior and midnight crying sessions about lost lifestyles. My mom texted me yesterday. I told Leona, flipping through my phone to find the message. Mrs. Rahimi. She wanted to apologize again. What did she say? I read the text aloud. Beta, I am sorry for my daughter's behavior. We failed her by giving her everything without teaching her gratitude. You deserve better. I hope you are happy. That message had hit me harder than I expected. Mrs. Rahimi got it. She understood that respect and gratitude weren't optional in relationships, that partnership meant both people contributing, that love without appreciation was just exploitation with better marketing. I'd written back, thank you for saying that. You didn't fail her. She made her own choices. I hope she finds peace. And I meant it. I genuinely hoped Soraya would eventually figure out how to be happy without someone else funding her lifestyle, how to build relationships based on mutual respect instead of financial dependency, how to find satisfaction in her own accomplishments instead of other people's wallets. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My promotion had come through at work, along with a nice raise. I'd lost 15 pounds, partly from the gym routine with Elias, partly from not stress-eating my way through constant relationship drama. Leona and I were taking things slow, building something real instead of rushing into anything. My apartment was quiet in the best possible way. No passive-aggressive sighs, no complaints about exhausting part-time schedules, no casual mentions of other men showing interest. Just peace. Sometimes I thought about all the money, energy, and time I'd wasted trying to make someone happy who was determined to be miserable. 3 years of walking on eggshells, 3 years of funding someone else's dreams while mine got put on hold, 3 years of being treated like a backup plan while believing I was building a partnership. But then I remembered the most important lesson from the whole mess. When someone laughs at the idea of respecting you, stop being their option. Soraya had wanted other options, so I'd given her every chance to explore them. And when all the bridges burned, the only one she couldn't cross again was back to me. She'd gambled that I would never actually leave, and she'd lost everything. I'd bet on myself, and finally won.